Welcome back, everyone. Let's talk about the next Harry Potter movie, my Harry Potter film reviews, before Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald comes out next week. My next Harry Potter movie to review is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And this is one that I think is an interesting installment, just because this is considered by many to be one of the best out of all of them. And I love all of them equally, pretty much. And I really think that I understand why people think this is one of the best ones. I feel like after the first two movies, which are great, but they're more childlike and whimsical in a way, but they have scary moments and actually challenge kids, I think. But after this first two movies directed by Christopher Columbus, we get Alfonso Cuarón, who directed Children of Men and Gravity, movies like that. And I love Children of Men and I love Gravity, so... And I saw this before those movies, obviously, because Gravity came out a couple years ago, and Children of Men came out after, but I didn't see it until a couple years ago as well. So, but in terms of like him as a director, the thing I noticed in this movie is that his artistic style, as opposed to the first two movies, carries on throughout this franchise. After this movie, it stays the same, and I really think that's cool, because this is a very competent director, director who does very well with how visually pleasing this movie is, and how how the movie's formed, how it's written, even though it's from the novel, which is pretty accurate to the novel too as well, like the first two. But he does a great job, Alfonso Cuarón, at doing a great job of directing this film, making it look really beautiful and dark and haunting, which makes sense with like the Dementors taking over Hogwarts, so the movie is more darker because they suck the life out of everything. And I think that he just does a fantastic job, and his mark, even though he directed only one Harry Potter movie, his mark stayed throughout the rest of the franchise, which you don't really see with the other ones. So that's really cool. Well, David Yates, I guess, because he directed a majority of them after the fourth one. So starting with 5, he's directed every other movie since. So I really do think that Alfonso Cuarón was a great director. Like, he really was a very good fit for this next film and making it a little darker, even though it is very darker than the last two. I love how it feels like it works fluidly too. Like, the first two are very whimsical, and then this is the one where it starts to get darker and more scarier, and I think that it works incredibly well. Even though there are moments of humor, of course, and moments of lightness, but this one just does a great job of being really different, just visually, and I feel like everything about it makes it even better than the first two, even though the first two are fantastic as well. And I love how the movie starts out like the book. Like, everything I'm going to say is like the book, basically. There's just a couple alterations, but the movie starts out with Harry, of course, the Dursleys, and Aunt Marge, Vernon's sister, comes over, who we've never met before, and is a horrible bitch, and I love how Harry stands up to her, and I love that scene, how, like, she is just lashing onto his family, like, horribly, like, not aware of what they really are, just a horrible person that's heard partial stories by Vernon and Petunia, probably, and then thinks that this is the truth, like his father was a drunk, and his mother was a bitch, so Harry just loses it, and I love the fact that Harry just blows up his aunt. And not literally blows her up, he like makes her puff out into a balloon and she floats away. And that's just a great scene entirely already. Just, it's really fun, really great. It's a great way to have this horrible character get what she deserves. And she doesn't even die, she just goes, like, she gets unballooned later, because Fudge says that to Harry later, like we found her at the under these chimneys, and like they erased her memory, and like they put her back to normal. But I just thought that was hilarious, that scene alone. I just love how horrible she was, and she got her comeuppance for it. I thought that was great. And then Harry gets so pissed that he leaves, and he used magic outside of school, which is not a thing that you can do in the wizarding world. Into the regular Muggle world, can't use magic because it's illegal, and Harry is afraid that he'll get expelled from doing magic, blowing up his aunt. And then he goes outside in this dark and dreary looking like neighborhood, like in the dark, and then he sees this dog really briefly, but the night bus shows up, which you'll see more of the dog later. But the night bus is a really cool, awesome, again, humorous thing in the movie. The humor in these movies is pretty underrated. The first two, there were a lot of moments I thought were hilarious as well, but in this one, there's that great scenes with the night bus where, like, Harry, like, he doesn't even call for it, but then the night bus comes for him. It's like they come to wizards who are abandoned or left alone. And these characters on the night bus are so funny. Like Stanley Shunpike is the guy who like gets his luggage and like gives Harry crap because Harry says he saw something and he's like, "What'd you see?" And Harry just says nothing. He's like, "Well, come on then, come on." And then like Ernie, this old man who's driving the bus, and then there's a little shrunken head that is Jamaican and he talks really funny. He's just like they drive around Britain really fast, and like they drive around really quick, and like they encounter wacky scenarios where like they'll be between two big buses and go wedge between them while they will become really skinny, the bus, and then like the little shrunken Jamaican head will be like, "Little old lady at 12 o'clock," and then like it'll show like this lady in front where they brake really quick and then they gotta wait for her to go. And the humor in this is just really fun. It made it really fun with these characters you only see once in the night bus. That's just really cool. A really cool addition. But I really like that this scene also introduces Sirius Black too, because it's just in that paper and Harry's like, "Who's that?" to Stan Shunkpike, and he just says, "Who is that?" "That's Sirius Black, that is. He's a murderer. Got himself locked up in Azkaban for it, and he was a big supporter of you-know-who." So Harry has already had it established that he knows who Sirius Black is now. And then Harry is taken to the Leaky Cauldron, and he's taken there, and Ron and Hermione come eventually and meet him. And then Harry's father, Arthur Weasley, who works at the Ministry of Magic, tells Harry that like you shouldn't go out looking for Black, and he doesn't tell Harry any like details on why he doesn't want to get him to go confront Black, like try to find him, because Harry will find that truth later. But Harry questions Arthur Weasley like, "Why would I go and try to find someone who's trying to kill me?" And I love that scene. That's a great scene, and it's good because Arthur Weasley isn't telling the full truth about it. Whenever Harry figures it out later, it works effectively. But they eventually start going to Hogwarts. They get on the train, and they encountered the Dementors for the first time in the movie, where you realize what they are, and then Harry almost gets his soul sucked out, and then he hears a scream, and then Lupin, Professor Lupin, who is very important in the rest of the films, and this film as well, uses a spell to cast away the Dementors and Harry, but right before Harry almost gets his soul sucked out, he hears a scream, like a woman's scream, and he believes it's his mother. So it establishes the Dementors and how they can suck out your soul, like completely take you out until you're a husk, you're nothing else. And they're really scary and effective in the way that it is filmed, where they're on the train and then like it gets icy over the windows, icy cold, and then you just see like the Dementor's hands like just pop out from the door, like do this, like do their fingers on the door. Like it's really effective in how creepy this is. The Dementors are. And I like how Lupin is the one who will be the one to establish how to do this throughout the movie with Harry, like how to stop these Dementors, like be able to fight against them. And the Dementors are sent to Hogwarts as well. Whenever they get to Hogwarts, Dumbledore says that they're sent there because Sirius Black is on the loose and we got to be everywhere. Like he might be on the grounds trying to find Harry Potter. So I love that too. And also, Dumbledore has been replaced in this movie because poor Richard Harris died after Chamber of Secrets, so he was only in the first two movies, but then Michael Gambon replaced him. And it really is a sad thing that he only made it through two movies and then they had to have a new Dumbledore, but Michael Gambon is just as great or even greater in a lot of aspects, and it sucks that Richard Harris passed away during these films being made. He was a big casualty to the first two films just being a great Dumbledore, and then he's gone in this one. It sucks. But Michael Gambon is a great replacement, so I really did like that a lot. And I liked how, again, after this, like the first two movies, after they establish they're at Hogwarts, they just are going to classes, doing all these fun things in this magical world. And I love, again, just seeing that. I love the scene where they're trying to get into the Gryffindor house, Harry and all of them, and then the fat lady's there, and she's just singing with a glass cup, like trying to sing and trying to yell and make sure the glass will break. Like she's trying to just get the glass to break on this cup. And she just keeps screaming out loud, screaming, and then what she does is just hit it on a rock and goes, wow, just with my voice, I broke this. And then like everybody's just keeps saying like the word to let themselves in, and she's like, all right then, come on in. Like, it's just a funny scene with that fat lady where she's just like singing, and then she's trying to make that glass break, but then she just hits it on a rock and acts like she broke it. That was a really funny scene. And then the scenes in the classrooms are great, and they establish the plot that really are, that they establish all the little red herrings that'll come throughout the movie. Like Professor Trelawney, who's the new teacher we see in this movie, we didn't see in the other two movies, talks about like they use tea leaves to examine like things in the future, like premonitions. And Harry gets the Grim, which looks like a dog, like what Harry saw earlier, and she loses it, like, you got the Grim, and then people realize, or we realize in that scene that the Grim is like the bringer of death, like he's something that will establish that Harry could be dead or is going to die with that Grim. I think that's really cool. I think that's cool that they establish that. And then we get Hagrid, who is now I forgot what the title is, but he does the outside, like, work with all the creatures. And there's this great scene of him teaching everybody with Buckbeak, where Harry rides Buckbeak, who is a hippogriff, who he had to gain his trust, this creature, and Harry and him fly all around Hogwarts, and it's a beautiful, incredible scene with the score as well. With John Williams directed the score too as well, which I always forget because I just thought he did the first two, but he's great. His score is incredible in this scene as well, where Harry's just on Buckbeak and they're riding in the water, and Harry just screams, woo, like he's just happy, and like it's really a fantastic scene and a beautiful scene. So I love that, and then I love how we get a classroom scene with Lupin, where Lupin is the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, and he has a thing with boggarts, which boggarts are something that will emit your biggest fear whenever it sees you. And he has a spell to backfire on that, where you say ridiculous, and like that'll make the boggart turn into something else. So we have that great scene of him teaching everybody how to fight the boggart. And for example, like with Neville, where like Neville is afraid of Professor Snape, so what the boggart turns into is Snape, but Lupin tells him to imagine his grandmother's clothes. So then Snape, he says ridiculous, and the Snape look-alike has his grandmother's clothes on him. Everybody laughs and everybody thinks it's funny. Or like when Ron is scared of spiders and a spider appears, then he says ridiculous, and the spider has skates on his leg, all 8 of his legs, and slips and falls. And then Harry goes up and sees the Dementor as his fear, and then Lupin comes up, jumps in front of Harry, and then Lupin's fear is the moon, the full moon, which will establish what he is later. But I love that scene. I really love that. It was just fun, it was entertaining, and it just gives off the hints of what'll happen with like Lupin, with the boggarts, and with how this movie will transpire. Like it does a great job with all these scenes. And then there's this great scene with Lupin that I want to mention in Harry at the Bridge, the first scene, where Lupin knew Harry's parents very well, Lily and James. And there's a great line by him that just kind of, it hits me in the heart. It's a really good line where he just says, he's talking about Harry's mother, and he says, she had a great gift of seeing the beauty in others even whenever they couldn't see it within themselves. And then he also mentions Harry's father and says, like, you are just like your father. You're more like both of them than you know. And it's just a great scene and a great moment for Harry, because he had never met his parents really, besides being old, not even 1 year old, a baby, and his parents were murdered, so he barely knew him. And hearing these memories that Lupin will tells him, it really works and really is emotionally pleasing because you get to have Harry figure out things about his parents. And then we get another classroom scene where it's Snape, and it's whenever Lupin is gone because of something, and then Snape takes them to page 394, which is about werewolves, and Hermione's like, "What? Why are we doing werewolves? We're not this far out in the study." And Snape just tells her to be quiet, and it makes sense because of what transpires later with werewolves. But that's a great scene. And then later we get another Lupin scene, which I really enjoy, which is like the first scene of them at the bridge, but again, it's them somewhere else, and Harry is trying to get Lupin to teach him like about the Dementors, but Lupin's weary, like, I don't know if I can. Like, it's a very strong thing, and it's a very hard thing to do with the Dementors. They take your biggest fear and make it to where you can become, like, it's scary enough to where you might not be able to fight these things. They literally become your biggest fear. So I love that scene, and I think that's a great scene of them starting to train together to fight against the Dementors. Like, Lupin trains Harry, and he eventually can get it. But I really love that, and I love moments like where Harry can't go to Hogsmeade because he didn't get his paper signed by Vernon because he's an asshole. So Harry can't go to Hogsmeade with Ron and Hermione, so he takes the invisibility cloak, but then Fred and George grab him and give him the Marauders map, which will play very much into effect with everything else in the movie. Again, everything in this movie that is established that I'm talking about plays perfectly into the rest of the movie, like to the end of the resolution. But they give him the Marauders map, which you can see anybody in Hogwarts anywhere, no matter what. So Harry then goes to Hogsmeade, and he learns the horrible truth that Sirius Black was Harry Potter's godfather, and he actually gave Voldemort, he told Voldemort where Lily and James were and murdered them. Basically, he was the reason they're dead. That was a great scene, and it's great whenever Ron and Hermione see Harry leaving in the cloak. Like, he's in the invisibility cloak, so he's walking around and you can just see footprints in the snow. But Harry goes to a rock, like, out in the middle of nowhere in Hogsmeade and just starts crying, and then Ron and Harry come and reconcile with him. And Harry just has this great line. Daniel Radcliffe has this great moment where he's like, he was their friend, and he betrayed them, and then he just screams, "He was their friend!" And then he just says, like, "I hope he finds me, because when he does, I'm going to be ready. Because when he does, I'm going to kill him." And it worked really well with his performance, and it worked really well with this character, and how you realize that his godfather is the one who told Voldemort where they were, and he's the reason they're dead. That's horrible, as you think. Like, that's horrible. And then you get more of training with Lupin, where, like, Harry figures out that there's a happy memory he has, even though it's kind of a weird one, because it's just he can kind of remember his parents when he's a baby just talking to him. So he uses that as his reasoning to have a happy thought to fight against the Dementors. You have to have a happy thought while you use Expecto Patronum, the spell, to be confident enough to defeat the fear. And I just think that's, again, really incredible. But then we get towards the end of the movie or the third act, I guess, ish of the movie, where, like, Buckbeak has now been sentenced to death, and it's a great moment where Hagrid loses it, because Malfoy was scratched by Buckbeak earlier, because Malfoy didn't respect Buckbeak. He just went up and, like, called him an ugly brute, and then Buckbeak scratched him. So Lucius Malfoy, of course, worked his magic and went to the Ministry of Magic and told them that they've got to execute Buckbeak because he scratched his son. And that's a great moment with Hagrid where he's crying and realizes that, or he says to Harry, Ron, and Hermione, like, Buckbeak's been sentenced to death. And it's just a sad human moment. I love that moment. His reaction is just so sad, and it's really hard to, like, great to watch. It's just so sad. So Buckbeak has been sentenced to death, and then Peter Pettigrew is on the map, which is this character that Harry heard whenever McGonagall was talking to Fudge and Rosmerga about Sirius being his grandfather, or godfather. He heard about Peter Pettigrew, this guy who Sirius killed, but then Peter Pettigrew is on the Marauders map. So he goes out to look for him, but he can't find him, and he finds Snape in return. And Lupin comes and saves Harry, but then it still isn't established like what's going on. Like there's something up because Pettigrew is dead. Like they said he died. Like Sirius killed him. He even told Lupin about it, and Lupin's like, "Well, I'll check." And then we get like, as the movie starts going towards its end, we get this great moment where Harry is like in class with Trelawney, and he's the only one left, and he looks in her little ball, and it shows Sirius's face like kind of popping out of the ball, like in the reflection, and then Trelawney grabs his shoulder and just talks in a like possessed voice, and she just says like, "He will come tonight. He will come tonight, and servant and master shall be reunited once more." And then like she like breaks out of this like unconscious like possessed thing where like she's saying a premonition. But servant and master will be reunited tonight once more. So I like that. I think that's great. And then so it's being established that like this something big is going to happen tonight in the movie. And then we get to Buckbeak's execution where it's horrible and sad, and then Harry and Ron and Hermione leave, and then Buckbeak is executed. So, but then Scabbers, Harry's rat from all three of the movies that he's had for 12 years, bites Ron, and then then the Grim comes out and grabs Ron, like the Grim that Harry's been fearing, the Grim that everybody's been fearing, grabs Ron, pulls him underneath the Whomping Willow into this hole that there wasn't established before, which is a great, cool thing. Like, there's a secret passageway under the Whomping Willow, which makes sense because it's a big tree that will bash you if you get even close to it. So Harry and Hermione have to fight against the willow and get thrown in there because Ron was already pulled in by the Grim. But then it leads to the Shrieking Shack, which they kept mentioning throughout the movie. That's in Hogsmeade, like the most haunted place in Britain. But it leads to the Shrieking Shack, and they encounter Sirius Black there. And Sirius Black is saying, like, one will die tonight, like, I'll kill him. And he's not being fully truthful on what he's saying. And then Lupin appears, and they both are going to say they're going to kill him, but they don't know who they're talking about. And then I love how Hermione, her reaction is like to Lupin. She says, "No, I trusted you. And all this time you've been his friend." And then like Hermione explains, like, as Snape had that class whenever Lupin was sick about werewolves, and Hermione says that Lupin's a werewolf to everybody, like that's why he's been missing classes. And Lupin's like, you truly are the smartest witch of your age, Hermione. And then Snape appears, and again it's just like Snape is so happy. Vengeance is sweet that like he finally finds Sirius Black working with Lupin, and then you realize that there's something up with them, like Snape has a vendetta kind of against them, it seems like. And then they realize that the rat is Peter Pettigrew. That rat for 12 years that Ron has had is Peter Pettigrew, who has been hiding and cut off one of his fingers to where it looked like Sirius murdered him. And Peter Pettigrew told Voldemort about where Harry's parents were, and he's the one who told them about it. So Sirius is innocent. Sirius went to Azkaban prison for 12 years out of nothing. Like, he literally is innocent. And he never told anybody about their whereabouts. It was Pettigrew, and Pettigrew lied about it, and Pettigrew became a rat and pretended that he got killed by Sirius. So Pettigrew is a horrible character. I love him, but it's so, man, it just makes me so mad. And he just sold all the information to Voldemort. So it's Pettigrew who's behind it the whole time. That's the reason why Harry's parents are dead, truthfully. And the Dementors, like they were, actually not the Dementors, sorry. Off topic. I was going to say that they leave the Shrieking Shack, and Harry says, like, we're not going to kill Pettigrew. We're going to have the Dementors take care of him. So they leave, but then it's the full moon. So then Lupin becomes a werewolf and is out of his mind. Like, he's a werewolf, so he can't think straight about anything. He's not thinking human thoughts. He's just a werewolf. So he goes out, and then Sirius becomes the Grim again and fights off the Lupin as a werewolf. And then Snape actually protects Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Like, he's being protective. Even though he's a dick, he's being very protective, and I love that about Snape in this movie. And then Harry runs away while Ron and Hermione and Snape are up there to save Sirius, because Lupin as a werewolf is actually almost killing Sirius. It seems like Sirius is crying and whimpering in a dog voice. And Harry goes down and finds Sirius at the edge of the water, at the end of like a lake. And Sirius is there, and the Dementors all come. Every single Dementor guarding castle comes down, swarms Harry and Sirius, and sucks out Sirius's soul. But then Harry sees from a distance somebody uses the Patronus charm, Expecto Patronum, and that sends all the Dementors away, and Sirius's soul is brought back into him. But Harry knocks himself out basically out of being his soul almost sucked out too. So he faints. He sees somebody with the Patronus charm from a distance. He can't see who it is. And then he falls asleep, and then Ron's in the hospital after being bit, and him and Hermione, you realize this awesome twist. Like, this is a really awesome twist where, like, Buckbeak's been killed, Pettigrew's gone, Sirius is up in like a cell in Hogwarts, going to be taken away to be killed tonight by the Dementors, and they've got nothing that they can do. But then you realize that Hermione has a time turner, which is a new item, which is only used once in this movie, which is great, where this time turner can reverse time, and Hermione used it the whole year to do multiple classes at once. Because she's such a bright, like, she wants to do everything, she wants to do every class. And there's even so many hints earlier in the movie, like when Ron says to Hermione, like, how can you be in astronomy but be in this class at the same time? They're both at the same time. Or like, where she just appears in class and you don't see her come in. Like, it happens a lot throughout the movie, but she has the time turner. And it's such a cool twist that, like, is so subtle. And she and him go back in time, Hermione and Harry. They save Buckbeak. They save Buckbeak, and then the executioner just hits a pumpkin with his axe instead. So it's a great reveal that Buckbeak is the one that is saved. And then they go down, and Harry and Hermione watch Sirius as it goes where Harry and Sirius are at the edge of the lake again. And then Harry and Sirius are kind of dying. They're sitting there like, don't know what to do. Harry's like, my dad will come. He thinks it's his dad that did the Patronus charm. But then he realizes, since we're back in time, he's the one who did it. So he does the famous Expecto Patronum line, and he's the one who saves himself and Sirius. And it's a great moment. It's such a great, epic, chilling moment where, like, you realize that he's the one who did it, the Patronus charm, when he's at the previous time in the film where he's at the lake. Like, this version of him did it, but he just didn't realize it because he couldn't see from a distance who it was. The charm was too big to block that person who's using it. So I love that, and it's just a grand, epic moment. It gives me chills. And then, of course, Harry and Hermione go and break Sirius out of the tower with Buckbeak. They go out and let Sirius go, and I love that final goodbye. It's really sad because Sirius as this character, you thought him introduced in this movie and book, he is this character who was a killer, and then you realize that he was completely innocent, robbed of everything in his life for 12 years, being in prison for 12 years, in Azkaban prison. And there's that moment of him when Harry says to Sirius, I want to go with you. And Sirius just says, maybe one day when my life is in order, we can live together, like we can actually live kind of as a family. And because Harry doesn't want to live with the Dursleys, of course, and he's finally found some true family that is still alive. But Sirius says, whenever my life is right, one day we can. And he says, like, but you know that the people we love truly never leave us. You know they're right in here. And he just, like, touches his chest, which is a great moment. Like, as in your heart, like they're in your heart still. And Sirius leaves and says goodbye to them, and, like, it's just such a sad, emotional moment. And it's even though you see him later in the movies, it's so sad for this moment to see him go. I love that moment. And then, like, he says, of course, like, you look just like your father, except you have your mother's eyes, before he goes. And it's just, again, it plays perfectly into how he and Lupin had such a great relationship with his parents. And he's finally found somebody who knows, like, who had the relationship with him. it's so sad. And then of course, like, they saved the day. Everything's good. Buckbeak's fine. Sirius is gone. Pettigrew escaped though, which they couldn't fix because they couldn't. It can't be seen. Like, if they're reversing time, like Hermione says, bad things happen to people who meddle with time. You can't be seen. So Pettigrew still escapes. Pettigrew's gone, and that means, I guess, off screen that Servant and Master are reunited because he probably goes right to Voldemort after this. But it's just so great. Like, it's such a great... Everything about this movie had such a great twist and such a great... Everything about it, I felt like... It's so subtle with all the twists, like with the time turner, with Hermione not being there, and with Sirius being this killer who is not the killer at the end, and realizing that Pettigrew was the rat, and realizing that Lupin is a werewolf. Like, all these moments in this movie make it so intriguing whenever you realize all these twists. In the movie or the book. Like, they just do a fantastic job. And the end of the movie is basically just Lupin resigns and says goodbye to Harry. Like, he can't be the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher because he's a werewolf. At the full moon, he'll keep changing. So he realizes that whenever they realize what, because Snape knew about him being a werewolf, Snape will probably tell the truth to everybody. So Lupin immediately knew that families would not want him to teach at Hogwarts if he is a werewolf. So Lupin resigns and leaves. And it's a sad scene, just a sad scene of Lupin going too, because Harry loses both of the two people who have the only connection to his family. But Sirius is his family now, and Lupin becomes kind of like this, kind of like family, even though they're not related technically. I guess Sirius isn't either, but he's the godfather. So it just really, it's so sad to see both of them go in this movie, because they both give such a great connection to Harry, because he finally finds a longing for something with his family, like connection to his family. It's just so horrible that they leave, but of course they're in the other movies, but it's just so sad in this first one that they're gone. And then Harry gets a broomstick, Firebolt, which is the most powerful and fastest broomstick, which I think in the book it happened halfway through, and in this one it happened at the very end of the movie, which is totally fine with me. It was a fine way to end it, because then you see that there's Hermione shows him this feather, which Buckbeak's feather, that was with the broom, so it was Sirius who gave him this gift. Because he broke his Firebolt earlier whenever he encountered the Dementors at the Quidditch match. So it just ends on Harry flying his Firebolt, but it just, I don't know, like, it works so well, and everything about this movie works incredibly well with these characters, with how it's filmed, how it looks, as opposed to the other two, which look great too, but this one has such a dark feeling to it. The humor is great, the characters are so great, the twists are so intriguing. Everything about these reveals in this movie and the book are just so interesting. This has so many reveals that it's almost overloaded in a way, but it works incredibly well. Every twist I mentioned, it's so great. So I love Prisoner of Azkaban. I can see why this is easily people's favorite of all the films. Even though I love them all pretty equally, this isn't my favorite, but it is fantastic. And I'm not saying that as an insult to the movie in any way, shape, or form. It's just, I love every one of these movies. So I cannot choose, really. I think there's one I could choose, but whenever I get to that, I'll say that. But it's so hard to choose, because these are both, all these movies I think are equal. All these Harry Potter movies, they're all incredible. So this was just another incredible Harry Potter movie. I'm so glad I rewatched it. I love talking about it. I can't wait to talk about Goblet of Fire next, because that'll be an interesting one. But as of now, Prisoner of Azkaban, really enjoyed again. Love this movie to death, like every other film in the franchise. So thanks guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for more Harry Potter reviews.